The dead were already piled 3 deep around him. Oren stood alone in front of the keep's gates, both scimitars drawn, watching the enemy army close the distance. Behind him, the fortress held. Ahead of him, a few hundred soldiers approached him cautiously. He rolled his shoulders and let the mana cycle through his legs, flushing out the fatigue from the last hour of fighting. His muscles responded immediately, fresh and loose, like he'd just stepped onto the field, rather than spent the morning routing the army's forward line by himself. The scimitars caught the light as he raised them. The blades were his own work, forged and etched by his own hands over the course of a month. Mana pathways ran through each one in precise channels, carved deep into the metal along the surface. Pouring mana down different channels created different effects. The front line charged him from multiple angles. Oren stepped into them and threw a mana slash wide to the right, a crescent of blue energy that tore outward 15 feet and cut through the first rank like they weren't there. He pivoted and threw another to the left. A dozen soldiers went down in 2 strokes. He didn't stop moving. A volley of arrows came screaming in from the left flank. He turned, raised his right scimitar, and activated Mana Shield. A rounded barrier of pale blue light snapped into place in front of him. The arrows hit it and stopped dead, hanging for a moment before clattering to the ground. He dropped the shield as the archers knocked again and charged toward the next cluster of soldiers instead, closing the distance before they could loose a second volley. Spearmen braced to receive him. Oren slashed with his left blade and triggered Lightning Channel. The bolt cracked out on contact with the first man and immediately jumped sideways, chaining from body to body through the tightly packed formation. 4 men went down in a chain reaction before the current finally ground it out. The ones left standing were still flinching from the flash when he was already past them. He fired Wind Blast downward and vaulted up and over a shield wall, landed behind it, and cut the back rank apart before anyone could turn around. From somewhere in the middle of the formation, 3 mages raised their hands in unison. The fireballs came fast, 3 of them streaking in from different angles. Oren planted his feet and threw a mana slash straight into them. The blue wave hit all 3 fireballs head-on. The magic unraveled on contact, the fire collapsing and dying mid-air without landing. The mages stared at him. He fired Wind Blast behind him and closed the gap in an instant, cutting the mages down before they could conjure a second volley. A second volley of arrows came from behind, from the dedicated archer line that had held back while the infantry engaged. Oren changed direction without slowing and fired Wind Blast to propel himself up and forward. He cleared the spearmen below him entirely, sailing over their heads while they stabbed at nothing. A second Wind Blast at the peak of the arc pushed him further, closing the gap to the archers fast. He came down in the middle of their formation. 2 mana slashes cleared the immediate space around him. The archers who survived scattered. The spearmen who rushed in to protect them ran into Lightning Channel and fell in a crackling heap. He activated Flame Channel on his right blade, fired Wind Blast to close the distance to the catapult being wheeled into range, and cut through the main beam in a single stroke, leaving it a useless heap of flaming timber. Then he stopped. The field had gone quiet except for the sounds of retreat. Soldiers were running, not regrouping, not falling back to reposition, running. The army's will had broken somewhere in the last few minutes while he was moving through them, and now there was nothing left to fight. Oren pulled a cloth from his belt and cleaned both blades carefully, walked a few paces clear of the bodies, and slid the scimitars back into the half-sheaths on his back. Behind him, the keep's gates swung open. Cavalry poured out at full gallop, streaming past him on both sides, pursuing the fleeing soldiers across the field. The sound of hooves filled the air, a rolling thunder that faded as they pushed further from the walls. One of the riders glanced down at him as they passed. Oren raised a hand.
"I'll leave the rest up to you."
The rider snapped a sharp salute without breaking stride, and then the cavalry was past him, and the field was emptying, and the battle was over. He started walking toward the keep. The roar hit him before he was through the gates. His name, over and over, from what sounded like every person inside the walls. Soldiers clapped him on the shoulders as he passed. Someone shoved a drink into his hand. A group of guards near the inner corridor were chanting, stamping their boots against the stone floor in rhythm. Oren let it wash over him, nodding, accepting the hands that reached out to touch his arms and his back, like they needed proof he was real. He had fought 100 battles. He had never let himself believe any of them were the last one. This one felt different. Cedric was waiting for him at the far end of the courtyard, grinning like a man who had just won a wager. He was tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in his general's uniform with the top buttons undone, and he crossed the distance between them in long strides and pulled Oren into a tight embrace.
You impossible man.
Cedric said into his shoulder.
You actually did it.
Did you doubt me?
Every single time, and you prove me wrong every single time.
He pulled back and looked at him, still grinning.
Come on, my quarters. We have things to celebrate.
Cedric's quarters were on the upper floor, away from the noise of the hall below. The room was large and well-appointed, with thick rugs and heavy curtains, and a writing desk buried under maps and correspondence. A fire burned low in the hearth. Cedric poured the wine himself, pulling a bottle from a cabinet near the window and filling 2 cups without ceremony. He held one out to Oren and raised his own.
To the man who just bought this kingdom, 20 years of peace.
Cedric said.
They'll be telling stories about you long after both of us are gone.
Oren took the cup and drank. The wine was good, rich, and warm, and he felt the tension of the day begin to ease out of his shoulders for the first time. They talked for a while. Cedric walked him through what came next, the formal surrender, the negotiations, the slow work of dismantling a war and rebuilding something that looked like normal life. There would be a ceremony, a commendation from the crown, compensation that would set Oren up comfortably for years.
You've earned it. Rest. Eat well. Sleep in a real bed for once. You've been fighting since you were 17 years old, and you don't have to anymore,
Cedric said. Oren set his cup down on the desk and realized the room had gone slightly soft at the edges. He blinked again. His stomach turned over hard, and a wave of heat rolled up through his chest. He put a hand on the desk to steady himself and found that his hand wasn't responding the way it should.
Cedric, I don't feel right.
Cedric didn't move. His expression hadn't changed, but something behind his eyes had gone very still.
What did you put in it?
Oren said. It wasn't a question. Cedric set his own cup down slowly. He hadn't touched it.
I'm sorry,
he said quietly.
I am genuinely, horribly sorry.
Oren tried to push himself upright, and his legs buckled. He caught the edge of the desk with both hands, breathing hard, tunnel vision closing in from the sides. His mana was cycling frantically, trying to fight what was moving through his blood. But whatever was in the wine was moving faster.
The crown. They've been afraid of you for a long time. With the war over, with no enemies left, you're the most dangerous thing in the kingdom. There's no one who could stop you if you decided to turn those swords on them. No army, no mage, nothing.
He paused.
They couldn't allow that,
Cedric said.
So they sent you.
Oren's voice came out thick and wrong.
They knew you'd never see it coming from me.
Oren reached for his scimitars. His fingers found the hilts and he pulled, but his arms had gone weak and the blades barely cleared the sheaths before his knees hit the floor. The room tilted. Cedric was standing over him now, face drawn, something that might have been grief moving behind his eyes.
I love you like a brother,
Cedric said.
I need you to know that.
The floor came up to meet him. The fire in the hearth was the last thing he saw, burning low and quiet in the dark. And then, even that was gone. Then there was light again, and noise, and warmth, and nothing made any sense. He was small, impossibly small. The ceiling above him was rough-cut timber, and a young woman was leaning over him with tears streaming down her face and a smile so wide it looked like it might break her. Behind her, a broad-shouldered man with calloused hands was trying very hard not to cry and failing completely. He had been a warrior for 20 years, and now he had reincarnated as a baby, but he still had all of his memories. He had never felt so disoriented in his life. They named him Darion. It took him a while to answer to it without a half-second delay. But he got there eventually, and honestly, he didn't mind. Oren had been a name that came with a great deal of weight attached to it. Darion was just a name. A farmer's son from a village called Greenvale, with no history and no reputation and no crown looking at him sideways. He could work with that. He grew up quietly, the way he had never been allowed to the first time around. He helped his father with the fields, learned the cycles of planting and harvest, and kept his head down. When he was old enough, he apprenticed with the village blacksmith, a heavy-set man named Tolan, who had been working iron for 40 years and thought he'd seen everything. He hadn't seen anything like Darion. The things Tolan spent months teaching other apprentices, Darion absorbed in days. His hammer strikes were precise and controlled, in a way that made no sense for a boy his age. His instinct for heat and metal and timing was something Tolan couldn't explain, and eventually stopped trying to. The forge work built him too, layering muscle across his frame through his teenage years, until he was broader and stronger than most men twice his age. He never told anyone why he was so good at it. On the morning of his 18th birthday, he sent Tolan home early and worked alone. It took most of the day. 2 scimitars, forged and shaped from the best steel he'd been quietly setting aside for months. When the blades were done, he moved to the etching, the part that mattered most, carving the mana pathways into each one with a precision that had nothing to do with anything he'd learned in Greenvale. The channels ran deep and clean along the flat of each blade, exactly as he remembered them. He set down his tools and held them up in the fading light. They were good, better than good. As far as he knew, there wasn't another pair of weapons like them anywhere in this world. He named the left blade Sheen, which meant death in the old language of Velfar. The right he named Khan, which meant rebirth. The long knife for his lower back he had finished a few days earlier, its mana pathways etched in the same fashion as the scimitars. The half-sheaths for his back he had made the week before, sized and fitted in advance. He strapped everything into place and rolled his shoulders. He stood in the middle of the empty forge and rolled his shoulders. The weight sat perfectly. He was ready. The forge door creaked open behind him. Tolan stood in the entrance, still in his work apron, squinting against the last of the day's light. He'd seen the smoke still rising and come to check. His eyes moved from Darion to the scimitars, and he was quiet for a long moment.
Let me see them,
he said. Darion handed Sheen over first. Tolan turned it slowly in his thick hands, holding it up to the light, running his thumb carefully along the flat of the blade where the mana pathways were etched. He said nothing for a while. Then he looked at the second blade and was quiet for even longer.
I've been working iron since before your father was born. I don't know what these channels are for, and I don't know where you learned to do this,
Tolan said finally. He handed Khan back.
But I've never seen finer work. Not from anyone.
Darion took the blade and slid it into its sheath.
Thank you. For everything.
Tolan looked at him.
You're leaving.
In the morning.
The old blacksmith nodded slowly. He put a heavy hand on Darion's shoulder for a moment, then dropped it and turned toward the door.
Don't waste those blades on something stupid,
he said gruffly, and walked out into the evening without looking back. His parents took the news about as well as he expected. His mother went quiet in the way that meant she was upset, but trying not to show it. His father crossed his arms and pointed out, reasonably, that Darion was the most talented blacksmith in 3 villages and could name his price anywhere in the region. And why in the world would he want to leave all of that to go get himself killed?
I've had this planned for a long time. I'm not asking for permission. I'm telling you, so you don't worry,
Darion said.
We're going to worry anyway,
his mother said.
I know, but I'll come back and visit, I promise.
A man has to find his own road,
his father said gruffly.
Just make sure you find it, in one piece.
Darion embraced them both, shouldered the pack he had prepared the night before, and walked out the door into the morning. The road to Riverbend took most of the day. He walked it at an easy pace, in no particular hurry, letting the familiar fields of Greenvale fall away behind him. Sheen and Khan sat across his back in their half-sheaths. The long knife rode at his lower back, and the pack carried everything else he needed. Traveling light was something he knew how to do. He was excited. He'd been planning this since he had come to this world, and finally moving felt good. But underneath the excitement ran something quieter and less comfortable, a reminder he'd been carrying for 18 years. In Velthar, he had been the best, the most powerful, the most loyal, the most useful. And the moment the war ended and he stopped being necessary, the crown had decided he was a liability. Cedric had poured the wine and smiled, and that had been the end of Orin. He wasn't going to make that mistake again. No fame or reputation that climbed high enough to make powerful people nervous. He only needed a decent living and enough freedom to enjoy his life. That was the plan. He'd register at the guild, take work, and stay well below the kind of attention that could get him in trouble. It seemed simple enough, in theory. He knew Riverbend was close long before it came into view. The road widened and filled with traffic, carts and travelers moving in both directions. More people in a single stretch than he'd seen in any given month back home. When the city gates finally came into view, he stopped walking for a moment and just looked. It was enormous compared to Greenvale. The walls were stone, the streets beyond were packed, and the noise of it carried all the way out to where he was standing. He'd grown up in a village where everyone knew everyone, and strangers were a weekly occurrence at most. Then he walked through the gates and forgot about the size entirely, because the people inside were unlike anything he'd seen in either of his lives. He had grown up in Velthar, which was human from border to border. He had grown up in Greenvale, which was mostly human with the occasional traveler passing through. Nothing had prepared him for Riverbend. Foxkin moved through the market stalls, ears swiveling at sounds, tails moving behind them, male and female both. Catkin bargained with merchants at the roadside. A pair of lizard folk stood outside a tavern in quiet conversation. Elves moved through the crowd with the particular ease of people who knew they were taller than everyone else. A dwarf was arguing loudly with a cart driver near the main intersection and winning. Darion walked through all of it with his eyes a little wider than usual and reminded himself to look like he'd seen this before. He found the Adventurers Guild without too much trouble. It was a wide building near the center of the city, with the guild crest above the door. Inside it was loud and busy with adventurers clustered at tables or checking the quest board on the far wall, and conversations running over each other from every direction. Different races, different builds, different weapons, all of them moving in what felt like chaos. He made his way to the counter. The receptionist was a young human woman with an organized desk, and the kind of expression that was professionally cheerful without being fake about it. She looked up when he approached.
Welcome in! I haven't seen you before. First time registering?
Yes, it is. I just got into town.
We are so happy to have you. We are always happy to have new adventurers.
Thank you. Can you tell me how all of this works?
Absolutely. You'll start at E rank, same as everyone. Complete enough quests and demonstrate your ability, and you can move up from there.
She pulled out the registration paperwork and began walking him through it quickly.
The board over there has all available quests sorted by rank. Green tags are E rank. Those are yours to start. You'll want to...
The doors burst open. A man came through at speed, breathing hard, and the room went quiet before he'd said a word. The look on his face did that on its own.
Or control swarm, moving down from the mountains headed west toward the forest. Big one. Could hit the town if it keeps moving.
The guild hall shifted, conversations stopped, people reached for weapons and packs without being asked, the automatic response of people who'd heard words like those before. The receptionist, whose name Darion would learn was Arissa, had already moved to a different part of the counter and was pulling out a map. She looked up at the room.
I need someone to go west. I sent 2 adventurers out this morning on a herb gathering quest in that area. They don't know what's coming.
She looked around the hall.
Someone needs to find them and get them back before that swarm reaches them.
Many in the room had already left. Others explained that they couldn't leave since they needed to protect the city. Someone said the 2 women should just run back on their own if they heard anything. Darion stepped forward.
I don't mind going.
Arissa looked at him.
But you only just registered.
I know. But you need someone to go, and no one else seems to be available.
He nodded at the map in her hands.
Show me where they likely are, and I'll find them.
She hesitated for just a moment, then spread the map on the counter and pointed out the western herb patches. She couldn't give him an exact location, but she gave him the most likely areas and told him what the two women looked like. Darion studied the map for a moment, committed it to memory, and handed it back.
I'll be back with them shortly,
he said, and headed for the door. Outside the city walls, Darion picked up his pace. He cycled mana through his legs and let it push him forward, the familiar sensation of his muscles performing well beyond their natural limit, spreading through his body as the road gave way to open country. He added wind blast in bursts behind him, each one launching him into a short sprint that covered ground faster than any normal runner could manage. The western forest came into view within minutes. He moved through the tree line without slowing, reading the ground as he went, watching for tracks and crushed undergrowth. He heard the orcs before he saw them. The clearing opened up ahead of him, and he took it in quickly. A large group of orcs stood gathered around a tall tree at the far edge, watching with eagerness as one of them was working at the base of the trunk with a battle axe, the steady crack of iron against wood carrying clearly through the trees. Standing behind the group, a full head taller than any of them, was a troll. It was easily 8 feet of muscle, gray-skinned and heavy, with the kind of build that made it clear why most adventurers didn't survive their first encounter with one. They healed faster than you could hurt them under normal circumstances. 3 orcs were already dead on the ground with arrows protruding from their corpses. Darion looked up. 2 figures were visible high in the branches, Tigerkin girls by the look of them, ears flat against their heads. One of them still had a bow in her hands but no arrows left to draw. He drew his scimitars and ran across the clearing. Before he reached them, he used wind blast downward to launch himself into the sky to clear the orcs, and ignited Khan in the air as he came down on the troll in a single sweeping stroke that split it from shoulder to hip. The flames did the rest, burning through the regeneration before it could take hold. The troll dropped. The orcs charged in every direction and ran straight into Mana Slash, the blue arcs cutting through the group in wide sweeping waves before they could form up. It was over in seconds. Darion pulled out his cloth and cleaned both blades, then looked up at the tree.
It's clear,
he called.
You can come down.
There was a pause, and then the 2 girls came down through the branches quickly and dropped the last few feet to the ground. They landed lightly and stood staring at him. One of them had a greatsword on her back that she clearly hadn't had the chance to draw. The other had twin daggers at her hips and an empty quiver on her back, and was looking at the bodies on the ground like she was still processing what had just happened. The first one found her voice.
You killed the troll in 1 hit! That was amazing!
Oh, it was nothing. They are really weak to fire. Are either of you hurt?
They looked at each other smiling and then back at him, and then both of them dropped into a low, formal bow at the same time.
My name is Kareen, and this is Zira. You saved our lives.
The one with the greatsword said,
We owe you more than a life debt. We will follow you, serve you, and stand by your side forever. We belong to you now.
Darion blinked.
That's really not necessary. I was just sent to look for you.
It is necessary.
Kareen said firmly.
It would make us extremely happy.
The quieter one, Zira, nodded enthusiastically without looking up from the ground. Darion searched for something to say that would diffuse the situation gracefully.
I appreciate that, and I accept your feelings on the matter, but…
Kareen's head came up. Her ears, which had been flat, were now fully upright. She grabbed Zira by the arm.
He accepted our feelings!
Zira's eyes went wide.
I was really worried he wouldn't.
I didn't mean…
Darion started. They both hit him at once, arms around him from either side.
We are going to take such good care of you. I will cook for you every morning.
Zira added quietly, her face tucked against his shoulder.
You will never have to worry about anything ever again. This is the best day of my life. Mine too,
Zira said softly. Darion stood with his arms out to his sides and stared at the tree line. He tried twice more to clarify what he had actually meant. Both times, they either didn't hear him or interpreted it as him being modest. Eventually, Kareen patted his arm reassuringly, which was somehow worse. He settled on the practical option.
There are more orcs and trolls moving through this area. We need to get back to the city right now and report in at the guild.
That got their attention. They released him, though not by much, and fell into step on either side of him as he turned back toward the road. Kareen walked close enough that her shoulder brushed his arm every few steps. Zira was quieter, but she hadn't put more than a foot of distance between them either. Darion kept his eyes on the tree line and focused on making sure nothing was following them. The guild hall had thinned out since he left, but enough people remained that when the three of them walked through the door, the reaction was immediate. Someone near the back let out a relieved shout when they saw Kareen and Zira, and a small cluster of adventurers came over to meet them. Darion made his way to the counter. Arissa looked up, and her expression shifted from worry to relief.
You found them!
There were about 12 orcs and a troll. They had the girls trapped in a tree and were chopping it down. I took care of it.
Before Arissa could respond, Kareen had pushed up beside him with Zira close behind.
He flew over all the orcs
Kareen said, her voice carrying across the hall.
and came down on the troll from above and split it in half with one strike. It was enormous. I have never seen anything like it in my life.
The orcs barely had time to turn around.
Zira added, a little more quietly, but with the same wide eyes.
They were all dead in seconds.
A few of the adventurers nearby had gone quiet and were listening.
And that
Kareen said, beaming.
is why we decided to make him our husband.
Arissa blinked. Then she smiled warmly.
Congratulations to all three of you.
Thank you.
I did not agree to that.
You accepted our feelings.
Kareen said patiently, as if explaining something obvious to someone very slow.
That is the same thing.
It is not the same thing. I was trying to be polite.
You were very polite about it.
Zira agreed, nodding. Darion looked at Arissa.
Can you explain to them that this is not how it works?
Arissa tilted her head slightly.
Actually, for Tigerkin, it kind of is. When a Tigerkin woman bonds with someone, it is a real commitment. It is not casual. They do not do it lightly.
She glanced at the two girls.
If they have decided you are their chosen and you acknowledge their feelings, that is considered an acceptance of the bond in their culture.
I did not know that when I said it.
That is understandable, but it does not change what happened.
Darion rubbed his face.
Is there a way out of it?
Arissa considered this for a moment with an expression of genuine sympathy.
It is pretty easy, actually. One of you has to die.
The hall was very quiet.
Wait, come again?
A grizzled adventurer at a nearby table leaned over to the man beside him and said, just loud enough to hear,
"This is why I never make eye contact with Tigerkin women."
I had a friend who learned that the hard way.
The other man said, and drank deeply from his cup.
Never saw him again.
Kareen ignored them entirely. She took Darion's arm with both hands and smiled up at him.
Do not worry. We are going to make you very happy.
One of the adventurers who had been listening spoke up from across the room. He was looking at Kareen and Zira with genuine curiosity.
"Don't you two believe in monogamy? Doesn't it bother you to share?"
Kareen turned to look at him like the question didn't quite make sense.
Share what?
"Your husband."
Kareen and Zira exchanged a glance that suggested they had just been asked why water was wet.
Strong men have multiple women.
Kareen said simply.
Why would we object to that? Why would I want to be with a man that could only attract a single wife?
"Because jealousy, maybe?"
The adventurer started, and then seemed to lose the thread of his argument.
A powerful man with only one woman would be wasteful.
Kareen added helpfully.
It would also be lonely for the women.
Zira said, with a small serious nod. Darion decided that arguing further in the middle of the guild hall was not going to help anything. He thanked Arissa, collected whatever small payment existed for the errand, and announced that he was done for the day. Kareen and Zira each took one of his arms as they walked out into the street. He didn't fight it. Making a scene in public was the last thing he wanted. They found an inn 2 streets from the guild, a decent enough place with a common room downstairs and rooms above. Kareen spoke to the innkeeper before Darion could open his mouth.
We need a room with a large bed. For 3.
2 rooms, please.
Kareen looked at him.
Why 2 rooms?
You two share one, and I'll have the other.
He held up a hand before she could argue.
I'm sorry, but I need space to think. My word is final on this.
Kareen's expression shifted into something warm and impressed.
Oh, our husband must be a deeply contemplative man, planning out our lives together. He's so considerate. 2 rooms, then,
she said, as if she finally understood. They ate dinner in the common room downstairs. Darion sat down and the girls sat on either side of him before he could suggest the chairs across the table. A plate of food arrived and Kareen immediately speared a piece of meat and held it out to him.
I can feed myself.
We know,
Kareen said, and fed it to him anyway. Zira was already preparing another piece on her side. Darion ate and decided this was a battle he was not going to win tonight.
Can I ask you something?
He said between bites.
Anything you want.
Humans and Tigerkin. Can you actually have children together?
Kareen looked genuinely surprised that he needed to ask.
Of course. Humans are the most compatible race in the world. You can have children with almost anyone.
She tilted her head.
Did you think we would bond with someone we could not have children with?
I wasn't sure.
Our children will be Tigerkin, of course.
Zira said, with a shy smile toward her plate.
That is how it works when you mix with humans. Our cute children will come out full Tigerkin.
Strong Tigerkin.
Kareen added with great satisfaction.
This is a lot to take in.
We are just explaining how things work.
Kareen said cheerfully and offered him another piece of food. By the time the meal was finished, Darion had learned more about Tigerkin hereditary customs than he had ever expected to know on his first day in Riverbend. He said goodnight to both of them at the top of the stairs, waited until they were inside their room, and then went into his own room and locked the door. He spent a few minutes checking his blades out of habit, running his thumb along the mana pathways the way he always did before sleep, making sure nothing had shifted or dulled in the fight. Everything was fine. He set them beside the bed within reach, lay back, and stared at the ceiling. He had come to Riverbend to register at the guild, take quiet work, and keep his head down. He had been here less than a day. He closed his eyes and went to sleep. Darion woke up to sunlight coming through the window and the immediate awareness that he was not alone in the bed. Kareen was curled up beside him, sleeping soundly, with the relaxed expression of someone who had absolutely no concerns about being where she was. He stared at the ceiling for a moment, then at the locked door, then at her, and then at the window, and then the realization hit him. He had barely finished that thought when there was a knock at the door. Then the door opened. Zira stepped in, carrying a tray of food from the tavern downstairs, lock-picking tools still tucked into the lock on the door where she had left them after opening it. She had knocked as a courtesy. She had not waited for a response. She saw Kareen. She set the tray down on the small table near the window very carefully. Then she looked at Darion.
You let her sleep with you without me.
I did not let her do anything. I woke up and she was already there.
Zira looked at Kareen, who was beginning to stir. Then she looked back at Darion with an expression that was working very hard to stay composed.
If Kareen gets to sleep with you,
Zira said,
then I should get to sleep with you too. That is only fair.
Nobody is sleeping with anybody. That is not what this was.
Kareen opened her eyes, took in the scene, and smiled.
Good morning,
she said to both of them.
This is not a good morning.
You got to sleep beside him all night.
Zira said to Kareen, abandoning composure entirely.
Yes, I sure did.
Kareen agreed pleasantly.
That's not equal treatment.
No,
Kareen admitted.
I was being selfish. I'll make sure you can be with him tonight.
They both looked at Darion. He sat up and reached for his boots.
We are going to get breakfast, and then we are going to the guild, and we are not going to discuss sleeping arrangements at 7 in the morning.
She brought breakfast,
Kareen said helpfully, nodding at the tray. Darion looked at the tray, then at Zira.
Thank you.
Zira's expression softened slightly.
I made sure you got the 2 biggest pieces of chicken.
She said, looking at her hands.
You should eat first.
He could not argue with that, so he didn't. He pulled up a chair and the 3 of them ate in the small room. the girls on either side of him as they seemed to prefer in any situation that allowed it. Zira had in fact given him the 2 largest pieces and had arranged the rest of the tray so that his portion was clearly the best one. He noticed, but said nothing. Kareen's eyes kept drifting to the scimitars leaning against the wall beside the bed.
Those markings on your blades.
She said finally.
I noticed them yesterday. What are they?
Darion glanced over.
Mana channels. I etched them into the blade during forging. Different pathways carry mana in different ways and produce different effects when I push mana through them.
Kareen set down her fork.
I have never seen that before. I have never heard of anyone doing that.
It might be unique to me. I don't know of anyone else in Lumera who is a Runeblade warrior.
You forged those yourself.
Zira said, looking at the blades with new interest.
Yes, I did.
Kareen was quiet for a moment, and Darion could see her working through something behind her eyes.
You would be able to teach our children this technique. It should stay in the family. Generations of strong rune blades.
She nodded slowly to herself, already satisfied with this conclusion.
We met yesterday.
Yes, and it was the best day of my life.
Kareen agreed and went back to eating. After breakfast, Darion buckled on his weapons and announced he was heading to the guild to find more work. The girls fell into step beside him before he had reached the bottom of the stairs. The morning streets of Riverbend were already busy with carts and merchants. Darion walked at a steady pace, and the girls matched him easily.
How long have you 2 been in Riverbend?
A few years. We came from a small village to the north. It was too small with not enough work and very little opportunity.
Same reason I came here.
You're also from a small village?
Zira asked, glancing up at him.
A small farming village called Greenvale. About as small as they come.
Zira smiled at that, small and genuine.
We came together. We have been best friends since we were children.
How old are you?
Darion asked. The timeline was bothering him. A few years in Riverbend, D rank already, and they had seemed young when he first saw them up in the tree.
We're 17.
Darion slowed slightly.
Both of you?
Yes, we are.
He did the math.
You came to Riverbend when you were 15?
When we were 14, actually. We turned 15 a few months after arriving.
15 is adulthood where we come from. It is normal to leave home and find your own way at that age.
That seems pretty young.
Thank you for saying that.
Zira said with a smile.
My mom has been pestering me to get married for a while. She's going to be so happy to meet you.
Darion opened his mouth, thought better of it, and kept walking. After a moment, he asked,
And you got to D rank through normal progression?
Herb gathering, delivery quests, and small jobs. We worked our way up slowly. It takes time when you start from nothing, you know.
She looked at him sideways.
You registered yesterday and already killed a troll. Your starting point is different from most people's.
I had some advantages,
Darion said carefully.
You are very modest,
Zira said, with a shy glance in his direction.
He is. It is one of his best qualities.
Darion kept walking, and they soon arrived at the guild. The hall was quieter than the day before. Most of the adventurers who would normally be milling around were either out on patrol or posted at the walls. Arissa was at her counter, and she looked up when the 3 of them came in.
Back already? Good. I was hoping you'd come in this morning.
She explained the situation quickly. The orc and troll host was still moving, scouts were tracking it, and the guild's attention was almost entirely focused on the defense of Riverbend. C rank and above were assigned to serious combat readiness. D rank were being called in for support roles. E rank, as a rule, were not trusted for any of it. Kareen had been listening patiently up to that point. She set both hands on the counter.
He needs to be promoted, at least to D rank, probably higher.
It's okay, Kareen.
He killed a troll yesterday on his first day. E rank is embarrassing.
We appreciate the feedback.
Arissa said pleasantly.
Relax, Kareen.
Darion put a hand on her arm.
There is no need to rush. I don't want special treatment.
Kareen looked at him like he had said something baffling. Zira touched his sleeve from the other side.
but you deserve it, and it looks bad for us to be a higher rank than our husband.
She said quietly.
I know, but I want to earn it properly. Please?
They both subsided, though neither of them looked fully satisfied with this outcome. Arissa watched the exchange with undisguised warmth.
I like them.
She said to Darion.
I'm going to do my best to take care of all three of you.
She reached under the counter and pulled out a quest notice.
There is a mine to the southeast, about an hour and a half out. The miners have been driven out by rock lizards. Big, aggressive ones that have moved in and made themselves at home. Nobody wants the job because the parts don't sell well, and the lizards are annoying to fight. It's been sitting on the board for a week.
She set the paper on the counter.
Clear the infestation and I'll promote you to D rank today. Your ability is already well above E rank, and I'd rather find a reason to move you up than leave you stuck there.
I'll take it.
We'll take it.
Kareen corrected.
I was planning to solo it alone.
We know, and we'll solo with you.
Darion looked at them both. They looked back at him with identical expressions of complete reasonableness. He picked up the quest notice and folded it into his jacket.
Fine, let's go.
The road to the mine was easy to follow, a wide dirt track running southeast through open country. The girls walked one on each side of him as always, and they talked the whole way. Kareen had opinions about the guild ranking system, the mine quest, the weather, and several other topics. Zira added things here and there. Darion listened and said enough to keep the conversation moving and found, somewhere around the 40-minute mark, that he didn't actually mind it. They were a bit much. They were also genuinely easy to be around. He hadn't had that in a long time. In Velthar, he had been a weapon first and a person second, surrounded by soldiers and commanders and political considerations at every turn. In Greenvale, he had been an outsider by nature. These two didn't know any of that. They just walked beside him and talked and treated him like he was theirs, which was its own kind of strange, but not an unpleasant one. The mine came into view, looking mostly abandoned. The equipment shed near the entrance was locked, the cart tracks empty, no miners in sight. A large rock lizard was stretched out in front of the mine entrance, flat against the warm stone, scales catching the midday sun like it had been there for weeks and intended to stay. Darion stopped them 20 feet back.
I want to see how you two fight. Can you take that one?
Kareem was already moving before he finished the sentence. She drew her greatsword and came in fast, and the lizard snapped out of its sunbathing instantly, twisting toward her with a speed that was clearly surprising to anyone who hadn't fought one before. She adjusted without hesitating, taking the bite on a redirected slash that turned the head away, and Zira was already circling behind it with both daggers out, looking for the soft spot under the back leg. He circled them as he watched. They were good. Not flashy, but disciplined. They covered each other without needing to call it out, and neither of them panicked when the lizard changed direction suddenly. It took them a while because the lizard was fast and stubborn, but they were wearing it down. Then a second lizard came out of the mine entrance at a dead sprint. Darion drew Sheen and cut it in half in a single clean stroke as it passed him. It hit the ground in two pieces and stopped moving. He wiped the blade on his cloth and watched Kareen finish the first one with a clean overhead strike while Zira pinned its tail. They stood over the dead lizard, breathing a little hard, and looked at the other one already dead on the ground.
You didn't even move your feet.
It came straight at me.
Darion shrugged.
Come on, there are more inside.
The inside of the mine was dim and smelled like rock dust and something reptilian. 3 more lizards were spread through the first 2 chambers, one sleeping near a support beam and 2 more deeper in. Darion moved through them quickly, stepping around the first, drawing and cutting in one motion, moving on before it finished falling. The second came off the wall at him, and he sidestepped and took its head off on the way past. The third tried to bolt and didn't make it. He turned around. The girls were standing at the entrance to the first chamber, staring at him.
That was incredible,
Zira said softly.
It really wasn't. They're slow once you learn their pattern. Let's check the back chamber and make sure there aren't more.
You're incredible,
Kareen said, in the tone of someone making a factual observation.
Please stop saying that.
We'll stop saying it when it stops being true.
Kareen said, and followed him deeper into the mine. The back chamber was clear. Darion did a full pass anyway to be sure, and on the way out, he noted the tightness in Kareen's right shoulder from where the lizard had twisted into her swing, and the small cut on Zira's forearm from a claw that had caught her on the redirect.
Neither of you are badly hurt, but you took some damage on that first one. Do you have a healer in your group back in town?
We don't have a group. It's just us.
We've tried to find one, but most groups are already formed, and they don't really want to take in 2 people at once. It's easier to find a slot for one person than for both of us together.
Darion nodded. It made sense. The 2 of them were a package, and that complicated the arithmetic for existing teams.
You should get that cut looked at when we get back,
he said to Zira.
I'm fine.
I know. Get it looked at anyway.
She smiled at her boots.
Yes, husband.
Darion let that one go and led them back out into the light. Back at the guild, Darion gave Arissa a straightforward report. The lizards were cleared, the mine entrance was clean, and the infestation was not going to be a problem anymore. Arissa marked the quest complete and began processing the rank promotion. Kareen did not wait for him to finish.
He killed 5 of them in single strikes,
She told Arissa.
1 stroke each. The second one came out of the mine entrance at full speed and he cut it in half without even stepping back.
It came at me. It wasn't complicated.
He should be B rank at minimum, maybe A rank. D rank is still too low.
Kareen continued.
D rank is fine.
You're being modest again.
Zira said quietly from his other side.
I'm being accurate,
Darion said. He looked at Arissa.
I can't promote you too quickly, or I'll get yelled at. But I'll do my best to help you if I can.
Arissa smiled and handed over the updated guild card. She had clearly enjoyed the exchange. Darion took the card and pocketed it, and told himself the girls would settle down eventually. He was not entirely convinced of that, but it was the thought he chose to have. He was still standing at the counter when Arissa's expression shifted. A runner had come in from the back corridor and was speaking quietly to one of the senior staff. Arissa listened, asked 2 quick questions, and then turned back to Darion.
The group you encountered yesterday in the forest,
She said.
was not the main force.
Darion went still.
How large is the main force?
We don't have exact numbers yet. Scouts are still tracking it. But the estimates are coming in between 500 and 1,000, orcs and trolls combined.
She paused.
And most of it's not heading here. It's moving southeast, toward the capital.
Kareen's expression had gone serious. Zira's hand had found the hilt of one of her daggers without her seeming to notice.
The capital has walls and soldiers.
Arissa said.
But even strong defenses can be overrun by enough bodies. Orcs are physically stronger than humans, and trolls in large numbers are a different problem entirely.
She looked at Darion directly.
Riverbend still needs people here in case smaller groups peel off and hit us. But someone needs to run ahead and warn the capital. They need time to prepare.
I'll be happy to go.
We'll be happy to go.
Zira agreed.
It's 3 to 5 days on foot, possibly faster with horses, but the stables here are committed to the local defense. You'll be walking.
She spread a map on the counter and pointed out the main road south.
The monster host is large. Large forces move slowly. You should be able to reach the capital ahead of them if you leave today.
Darion studied the route. Straight road, no real navigation required.
We'll leave within the hour,
he said. They resupplied quickly, picking up extra food, water, and basic trail supplies, and were through the city gates before midday. The main road south stretched out ahead of them, open country on both sides, the sky wide and clear. Darion set a pace, and they moved. By the second hour, he had noticed the problem. He was cycling mana through his body out of habit, the low, steady burn that kept his muscles from accumulating fatigue. And as a result, he was covering ground at a rate that the girls were working to maintain. They hadn't said anything yet. They were both pushing without complaint. But he could see it in the set of Kareen's shoulders and the way Zira was breathing. He slowed down. Kareen glanced over.
You don't have to match our pace.
I know,
We can keep up.
She said.
You've been keeping up for 2 hours. We still have 3 days ahead of us, and I think it's okay to take our time a little. We'll still get there first, and I don't want to be exhausted if we get attacked along the way.
Kareen looked like she wanted to argue, and then thought better of it.
Whatever you think is best. Thank you.
Zira said between breaths. They walked on, and Darion told himself it was just practical. There was no point arriving at the capital with 2 exhausted fighters who couldn't do anything when they got there. It was simple logic. That was the reason he told himself. They talked as they walked, and at some point, the conversation turned to what came next.
After we deliver the warning, we'll leave as soon as possible, before the host arrives.
Kareen looked at him.
Why would we leave? We should stay and fight.
That is not our job.
It could be. A battle like that, against that many enemies, the recognition would be enormous. We could go from D rank to C rank in a single engagement. Maybe higher.
She said.
We could also die.
You won't die.
Kareen said, with the simple certainty of someone who had seen him cut a troll in half.
I appreciate the confidence. We're still leaving.
Why?
Zira asked. She was not pushing the way Kareen was, just genuinely curious.
You are clearly strong enough. Why do you hide it?
Darion was quiet for a moment.
Because notoriety attracts attention. And the kind of attention that follows a famous warrior isn't the kind you want. I've seen it before, and I just want a normal life. Work, travel, with enough money to get by. That's all I'm looking for, he said.
But you could be renowned. You could be the most powerful adventurer in the country.
I don't really want all that.
Kareen shook her head slowly, like she was trying to understand a concept in a foreign language. Zira watched him for a moment, and then looked away without saying anything, which meant she was thinking about it more carefully than she let on. They dropped the subject, but Darion knew it wasn't settled. The sun went down somewhere in the middle of open country, and they made camp at the side of the road. Darion laid out his bedroll, and the girls put theirs down on either side of him without any discussion, the way it had become routine in a single day. He was almost asleep when Kareen leaned over and kissed him goodnight. It was quick and casual and completely confident. From his other side, Zira sat up.
You got to kiss him?
I sure did.
And why didn't you kiss me too?
Zira asked Darion.
I was almost asleep.
That is not an answer.
Zira said. She had her arms crossed and her ears were flat, and she looked at him with the patient expression of someone prepared to wait as long as it took. Darion sat up, leaned over, and kissed her goodnight. Zira's ears came back up. She settled into her bedroll with a satisfied expression.
Good night,
Darion said to both of them and lay back down.
Good night, husband.
Sleep well.
Kareen said, sliding herself closer to him. He stared up at the stars for a while before closing his eyes. Morning came gray and cool. Before Darion had fully sat up, Kareen was already crouched over the small fire getting water heated, and Zira was laying out the food from the pack with careful attention to which portions were largest. When Darion moved to help, Kareen gestured back at his bedroll.
Please keep resting. We have this,
she said.
I'm already awake.
Then please sit and enjoy not having to do anything for a few minutes. We almost have everything prepared for you,
she said. He sat. Zira brought him a cup of hot tea and his food first, the best portions arranged for him, and sat down beside him while Kareen served herself. It was sweet and genuine, and a little overwhelming the way they wanted to take care of him. Darion ate his breakfast and thanked them both. They packed up and were back on the road while the morning was still cool. The second full day of travel passed without incident. Kareen talked about how exciting it was that they were traveling as a family. Zira stayed close and checked on him periodically with adoring glances that she probably didn't know were obvious. Darion watched the road and kept the capital in the front of his mind, but found himself engaging in the conversation more and more. They camped again that night in the same arrangement as before. However, Zira surprised him by kissing him goodnight before Kareen had a chance. She winked at Kareen and settled into bed.
You know I'm not opposed to doing more than a goodnight kiss,
Kareen said, turning to Darion with a smile.
Let's just get some rest for tonight,
he replied.
Okay, maybe tomorrow.
She replied and kissed him. On the third morning, they were back on the road early, and by midday, they saw a figure coming toward them from the south. He was a thin man in a wide-brimmed traveling hat, with a wooden staff and a pack on his back. He spotted them and slowed, then raised a hand in greeting.
"Travelers, well met. May I inquire which way you are heading?"
He said.
We are headed south, toward the capital.
The man blinked.
"I'm coming from the capital, or rather, from that direction."
He looked at the three of them and seemed to make a quick assessment.
"I'm Kaldor, by the way. I'm a traveling wizard. I was making my way to a town 2 days from here. How is the..."
I hate to inform you, my friend, but a large orc and troll host is moving toward the capital from the north. We're running ahead to warn them.
Kaldor went still. Then he turned and looked south, then north, then at his own feet.
"How large?"
Estimates between 500 and 1,000.
Kaldor took off his hat and ran a hand through his graying hair.
"Well,"
he said.
"that changes my plans entirely."
He looked up.
"I don't suppose you'd allow an old wizard to travel with you? The safest walls available seem like the right destination under the circumstances."
Of course,
Kareen said warmly, before Darion could answer.
the more the merrier.
There is nowhere safer than near our husband Darion.
Zira agreed. Kaldor smiled and fell into step beside them. He was easy company. Darion found himself asking him a lot about the area, and Kaldor was happy to explain as much as he could. By the time they made camp that evening, he had told them a little about himself and learned a little about them, and the conversation had been comfortable. When Darion pulled out his long runic dagger to light the fire, Kaldor's eyes tracked immediately to the blade. Darion channeled mana through the pathways etched along the flat, brought a controlled flame along the blade, and touched it to the kindling. The fire caught quickly.
"Interesting,"
Kaldor said. He was leaning forward slightly.
"I've never seen that before. Most mana application is either projected outward or kept internal. You're channeling through the blade itself."
It's how I fight.
"May I look at it?"
No, I'm sorry. It's a trade secret.
Darion said pleasantly.
Family secret?
Kareen said, with a firm nod.
It will be passed down to our children. It stays in the family.
Kaldor glanced between them with the expression of a man quietly revising his understanding of the situation.
"Of course. I apologize for asking,"
he said. When it came time to sleep, Kaldor watched Kareen and Zira settle their bedrolls on either side of Darion with an expression of dawning understanding. He gathered his own bedroll and moved it a respectful distance away.
"I'll give you all a little privacy,"
he said, and gave Darion a wink that Darion did not appreciate.
It's not like that.
"No, of course not,"
Kaldor said, in the tone of someone who believed entirely the opposite.
"Good night. And good night to your beautiful wives."
He settled down and was quiet after that. Kareen kissed Darion goodnight first this time. Zira tugged gently at his sleeve and looked at him with patient expectation. Darion kissed her goodnight too. She settled down looking satisfied. Kareen leaned in close.
We may have to wait for another night.
She confided in him.
I don't know how loud we'd be, and I don't want to be embarrassing,
she said while looking in Kaldor's direction.
It's probably for the best.
Darion sighed. Darion lay back and listened to the fire burn low and thought about how thoroughly his plan for a quiet, unremarkable life was going. They pushed hard the next day and reached the capital by late afternoon. Darion had seen fortress cities before, in another life, but this one stopped him at the edge of the bridge. The city sat on top of a high plateau, its walls rising from the cliff edge like they had grown there, stone on stone, with a castle visible above the rooflines behind them. The cliffs dropped away on all sides, 100 feet or more, sheer and unforgiving. One road in, one bridge across, and anyone who wanted to take this city had to come through that single, narrow approach. The bridge was wide enough for 2 wagons side by side and ran about 150 feet across open air. Kareen leaned over the edge briefly and pulled back quickly. Zira stayed near the center without looking down at all.
It's absolutely beautiful. I have never seen anything like it,
Kareen said, gazing up at the walls.
It's incredibly defensible. One road in, one way across. Anyone who wants to take this city has to come through that bridge,
Darion said, scanning the cliff edges and the bridge approach. The gate guards checked them through and took the warning seriously. Within the hour, one of them had escorted the group to the capital's guild branch, where Darion handed over the message from Orissa and laid out what they had seen and what the scouts had reported. The guild staff moved quickly. They assured him the information would reach the appropriate authorities within the hour. Darion thanked them and walked back out into the street.
Let's get something to eat, rest up, and then leave first thing in the morning, before any of this becomes our problem,
he said. The guild had recommended an inn 2 streets over. It had real chairs and hot food and a fire in the hearth that someone else had built. And after 3 days on the road, all of that felt like considerable luxury. Darion and the girls ate well, and he felt the tension in his shoulders ease slightly for the first time in days. He rented 2 rooms. The girls accepted this without argument, which he appreciated. He did a careful check of his blades before sleeping, the way he always did, and was asleep quickly. In the morning, both Kareen and Zyra were in his bed. He lay still for a moment, staring at the ceiling, listening to them breathe. Then he said, to no one in particular,
I don't know why I pay for 2 rooms.
Zyra opened one eye.
Yes, you act oddly sometimes,
she said, and went back to sleep. He got up, got dressed, and went downstairs to arrange for breakfast. They packed after eating and headed for the gate. Darion had the road south already mapped in his head. 5 days to Glassdale, well ahead of any host that hadn't arrived yet, and then back to a normal life. The guard at the gate held up a hand.
No one is permitted to leave. Orders from the garrison commander. The city is locked down,
he said.
We delivered the warning. Our job here is done.
You're welcome to file a complaint with the garrison,
the guard said, with the expression of someone who had already had this conversation several times this morning. Darion looked at the gate, then at the guard, then at Kareen and Zyra, who were watching him with expressions that were carefully neutral. He turned around and walked back into the city. With nowhere to be and nothing useful to do, they decided to walk. The city had changed overnight. Several of the market stalls were shuttered, their owners having packed away anything valuable. Soldiers moved through the streets in pairs and small groups. People moved with a nervous energy. At a small shop near the east wall, a craftsman was still open, selling jewelry made from local stones, polished and set simply. Darion stopped and looked at the display for a moment, then bought 2 small bracelets, one for Kareen and one for Zyra. They were not expensive. He handed them over without ceremony. Kareen looked at hers for a long moment, then looked at him.
Thank you so much. It's beautiful.
You're welcome. I'm glad you like it.
Zyra put hers on immediately and held her wrist up to the light with a small, pleased smile. That night, Darion rented 1 room. He saw no sense in wasting money. The alarm bells woke the city before dawn, ringing from every tower at once in the kind of urgent overlapping clamor that left no room for misunderstanding. Darion was already half awake when they rang, some part of him that had never fully stopped being a soldier registering the sound before his conscious mind did. He was up and dressed and had both scimitars on his back before Kareen and Zyra had finished pulling on their boots. The city had erupted in a controlled urgency, with soldiers running in formation, civilians being directed away from the walls, and adventurers and anyone else capable of fighting being waved toward the battlements. Kaldor was already on the wall when they got there, standing near a parapet with his staff in both hands, and the expression of a man trying very hard to look calm.
I can already see them from here,
he said when Darion came up beside him. Darion looked out over the bridge and took in the full scale of what was coming toward them. The host filled the far side of the bridge and stretched back as far as he could see. Orcs, mostly with patchwork plate armor, moving in loose formations. Trolls scattered through the mass at intervals, with their heads rising above the crowd. He scanned the crowd and ran the count in his head. There were somewhere between 700 and 1,000, and none of the estimates were encouraging. Around him on the wall, archers were knocking arrows, and mages were taking position. Soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder with spears and shields, perhaps 150 of them in total, maybe a few more. The orcs reached the base of the bridge and began to push forward. They were so densely packed that a few fell off the edge. Darion watched them come and felt the old familiar clarity settle over him. The defenders could hold the wall for a while, archers would thin the front ranks, and mages would do damage, but orcs were stronger than humans, and trolls healed, and there were far more of them than there were defenders. They were outmatched, and everyone on the wall probably already knew it. He watched the front ranks of the host flood across the bridge and felt the weight of what he already knew he was going to do. He turned to Kareen and Zira. He did not say much. He put one arm around each of them and pulled them in close for a moment, and they let him, both of them going still in a way they almost never did.
Stay on the wall. Protect the city. Do what you can.
Kareen pulled back and looked at him.
What are you going to do?
I'll be back,
he said. He stepped up onto the parapet before either of them could respond, and then he jumped. He hit the wind blast on the way down, angling it forward to carry himself out from the wall and away from the base. Then hit it again from below just before the ground came up to meet him, slowing the fall enough to land in a run. His boots hit the dirt and he was already moving, cutting toward the bridge at a full sprint. The bridge was a choke point. One man could hold them there, if he was the right man. And he was that man. He ran halfway across the bridge and planted himself near the middle and let the first wave of orcs come to him. They came in hard and fast, 4 and 5 abreast, the width of the bridge funneling their numbers into something manageable. Darion ignited Khan with flame and cut into the first troll before it fully registered his presence, driving the burning blade through its shoulder and down through the chest, the fire eating into dense muscle and not stopping. The troll dropped. The orcs behind it stumbled over the body and he was already moving. He swung Sheen and sent a lightning strike into a cluster of 5 on his left, watching the chain jump between them as they seized and fell. He worked like a whirlwind, chaining abilities together, one after another. Mana Slash opened space when the press became too tight, the blue arc cutting through 6 to 8 bodies at once and buying him a half second to breathe. Wind Blast launched him sideways off a troll's overhead swing and punched 3 orcs off the edge of the bridge in the same motion, their armor flashing briefly in the morning light before they disappeared below. He took a cut across the forearm from an orc he hadn't fully seen coming, and another gash along his ribs from a blade that found the gap between movements, and he bled and kept moving, because stopping was not an option he was willing to consider. The mana cycling held, feeding steady warmth into his muscles and keeping the exhaustion at bay. Every kill gave something back. He could feel it, the small returns of mana each time an enemy died within reach, absorbed almost automatically, replenishing what he spent. As long as there were enemies on the bridge, he would never run dry. An hour passed, or something close to it. The front ranks of the horde thinned as the corpses stacked up, slowing them down. The orcs tossed their dead off the side to make room, only to join them a moment later. The trolls took a moment longer, but they fell to the flames. Some orcs pushed past him on either side and ran toward the wall, but the archers were ready for them, and the mages behind the archers finished what the arrows started. None of them reached the gate. Up on the wall, Kaldor had stopped watching with his eyes alone. He had his mana sight open, which he used sparingly because of the mental strain, but he had opened it the moment Darion jumped off the wall and had not closed it since, because what he was seeing made no sense. Kareen and Zira stood on either side of him, not speaking and barely breathing.
His mana should be gone. He's been channeling continuously for nearly an hour. It should be gone,
Kaldor said, half to himself. Zira looked at him.
But it clearly isn't.
No, it isn't. He is cycling it through his body constantly. That should be draining him quickly. But the other hand...
He trailed off, watching.
Every time he kills one, the mana released on death flows back into him. He is actually absorbing it. As long as there are enemies, he is effectively self-sustaining.
Kareen said nothing for a moment, then said,
That is why he didn't want anyone to see.
It's extraordinary,
Kaldor said, and his voice had shifted into something that was not quite excitement and not quite alarm, but sat very close to both.
A man with an ability like that? The kingdom needs to know about this. He should swear loyalty to the crown, and he could be brought before the court. With proper support and the resources the crown could offer,
He seemed to realize he was talking out loud and steadied himself.
he is too valuable to simply let wander. The capital will want to meet him. They will insist on it.
Kareen looked at Zira, and Zira looked back. Neither of them said anything, but something passed between them that had nothing to do with pride. They had never understood his reservations, but they were beginning to understand it better now. Down on the bridge, Darion could feel the numbers thinning. The waves had stopped being waves. There were perhaps 100 left, maybe a few more, scattered and disorganized now, the momentum of the horde broken. He cut through another cluster and sent 2 more over the edge and took a moment, between movements, to look back at the wall. He could feel all the eyes staring at him. He knew what it meant. It would be impossible to go back after this and retain his freedom. He had been here before. He knew exactly where it led. The remaining orcs pressed forward, and he turned back to meet them, but something had shifted in his thinking. The city would survive. The defenders had rallied, and the worst of the horde was already dead. This was going to end, regardless of what he did next. The question was, what happened to him after? He already knew the answer, if he walked back through that gate. He maneuvered toward the edge of the bridge without making it obvious, working the fight gradually in that direction, letting the press of the remaining orcs push him rather than fighting the current. An orc lunged at him from the left, driving a short spear at his midsection, and Darion shifted just enough to let the blade slide under the arm instead of through it. At this distance, it was enough to sell what came next. He grabbed the orc by the armor and let his legs buckle, staggering sideways, selling it completely. A man hit hard and losing his balance, and then they were both over the edge. The orc flailed his arms as he fell near him. Darion hit Wind Blast and caught himself before the rocks, angling sideways into the shadows beneath the bridge. The orc that fell with him was not so lucky. He landed on a ledge and pressed himself flat against the stone and waited. Up on the wall, someone shouted something. The archers and mages kept firing. The remaining orcs and trolls pushed forward in a final desperate surge, and the defenders pushed back. And the fight above him continued for another 10 or 15 minutes before the last of it fell quiet. When it was over, Kaldor walked to where Kareen and Zira were standing and stopped beside them. He was quiet for a moment.
He was extraordinary. What he did today, I have never seen anything like it. The capital owes him a debt that cannot be measured.
Kaldor said finally. He paused.
I am sorry. He saved this city. He saved everyone in it.
Kareen stood very still, with her head hung low. Zira did not look at Kaldor. She was looking at the bridge, and the ravine below it, and the shadows at the base of the far cliff. She did not say anything. Kareen moved first. She turned from the wall and walked toward the gate at a determined pace. Zira was only a step behind her. The gate guards held up their hands. The area was not confirmed clear. There could be stragglers. The city was still under lockdown, and no one was permitted to leave until the cavalry had swept the road. Kareen told them, with considerable specificity, what she thought of that. The guards held firm. Kareen and Zira held their ground. The argument went in circles for the better part of an hour, until the cavalry returned with confirmation that the road and the ravine below the bridge were clear of any living threat. The gate opened for the horses coming back in. Kareen and Zira darted out before anyone could stop them. The cliff face on the far side of the bridge approach was not a clean descent. It was long and broken, and it took time to work their way down. When they reached the bottom, the ground was littered with the dead. Orcs and trolls scattered across the rocks in the sprawling mess. The girls moved through it methodically, checking bodies as they worked outward from the base of the bridge in expanding circles. They did not find him. Zira stopped near the water line, where the cliff met a narrow strip of rock, crouching low and reading the ground. There were marks here that did not belong to orcs. A handprint on the stone, a disturbed patch of gravel, a drag of wet boot prints leading away from the rocks and toward the cliff edge further south, with a face broke into something climbable. She stood up and looked at Kareen.
He's alive. He must have come down here on purpose,
she said. Kareen closed her eyes for exactly 1 second. Then she said,
Of course he did.
and started walking. They followed the trail for several hours, working along the base of the cliff and then up through a gap in the rock face that brought them out into the open forest beyond the capital's plateau. The trail continued through the trees, subtle enough that Zira lost it twice and found it again both times, and eventually it led them down toward the sound of running water. They smelled the smoke before they saw the camp. Darion was sitting beside a small fire near a stream, his shirt hanging from a branch above him to dry, working a strip of cloth around a cut on his forearm, with the focused patience of a man who had done this many times before. He looked up when they came through the trees, registered their expressions, and had the particular good sense not to look surprised. Kareen reached him first. She dropped to her knees and wrapped both arms around him and held on. And for a moment, she did not say anything at all. Zira came in from the other side and pressed her forehead against his shoulder and gripped his arm, the one without the bandage, and the three of them stayed like that for a breath or two while the fire crackled and the stream ran beside them. Then Kareen pulled back and hit him in the shoulder hard enough to mean it.
We thought you were dead.
I fell off a bridge. I jumped off the wall earlier in the morning, and that was higher.
That is not the point.
I know. I am sorry. It had to look real. I knew you'd catch up to me soon enough.
Zira sat back and looked at him carefully.
What happened back there?
She said. Darion sighed and stopped wrapping his arm.
I couldn't let the capital fall, especially with you two in it. But after holding the bridge, I knew that things were going to get complicated when I went back. The only way to retain my freedom was to die. How did it look up there on the wall? Was it convincing?
It was too convincing.
Kareen said, punching him again.
I assumed Zira would track me. I knew you'd catch up as soon as you could. You two are very hard to leave behind, after all.
Zira started working on the gash along his ribs with delicate fingers.
You could have told us your plan.
I had about 4 seconds before I jumped.
She considered that.
I suppose that's fair,
she said, grudgingly. They cleaned his wounds properly, which took a while, and involved Darion making no complaints about any of it, which Zira acknowledged with a small, approving look. The injuries were not serious, taken one at a time, but there were enough of them that the total picture was not pretty. Nothing that would slow him down in a day or two, but all of it needed cleaning. When they were done, Kareen sat back and looked at him.
You need a proper healer.
I need to stay out of the capital.
Your gear is in the capital, and so is ours,
Zira said. Darion nodded. He had been thinking about that.
You two head back and get our packs, and pick up a healing potion if you can find one. If anyone asks, I died bravely, and you already buried me. Then come right back here.
And then what are we going to do?
And then we leave,
he said. He looked at the fire for a moment, and then he looked at both of them.
We were planning to go to Glassdale before all of this. I see no reason to change that plan. We should keep going, keep exploring, and see what is out there.
Kareen looked at him.
Do you really mean we?
Of course, the three of us, as a family.
The word landed like something physical. Kareen and Zira pounced on him, knocking him over. He grunted with pain, but they ignored him in their delight, their tails moving in a slow, happy arc behind them. Darion looked faintly alarmed by the reaction and then decided not to comment on it.
Go get the packs. I will be resting right here.
They looked hesitant to leave.
I'm not going anywhere, and if I did, I'm sure you'd track me down to the ends of the world. I promise I'll never leave you again,
he said jokingly.
You had better not,
Kareen said with a smile.
I love you too,
Zira said, looking away.